Hello there, and thank you for joining us. I am your host, Denise Ames, and you are watching the Rustam Report. Today I have very special in-studio guest, author of Sammy Davis Jr., Me and My Shadow, Arthur Silber Jr. He's coming up. And welcome back to the Rustam Report. And before I introduce my special in-studio guest, I want to show this picture to our audience. We are going to be talking about the man in the middle. And for those of you who don't know, if you've been living under a rock, that is Sammy Davis Jr., the late, great Sammy Davis Jr. And here with us today is the author of the book, Sammy Davis Jr., Me and My Shadow, and also his best friend, Arthur Silber Jr. Thank you so much for taking time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and you're going to tell us all kinds of what you call side stories that people can't read in your book, and people in general don't even know about Mr. Davis.
Absolutely.
So let's just start from back in the beginning. You kind of got started with Sammy because your dad actually managed him, as well as some other stars. You want to just tell us a little bit about your father and who else he managed?
Yeah, my father was at the time was the biggest manager, really agent is the correct phraseology, and he had so many people that he managed, or some Nat King Cole, Hopalong Cassidy, Martha Ray. It's hard sometimes to draw these all out. The tap dancer, Mary Martin. I could really go on and on and on. Sometimes it doesn't roll off my tongue. Other times it just rolls on out of me, you know. But plenty big people. But the relationship of my father with the Wilmeston Trio was a little bit interesting, and I'm going to try to keep these as short as I can. My father was in vaudeville, as was my mother. And my father was a fairly big name of his own, Silber and North, a comedy dance team. At any rate, when he was in that ville, he met Will Maston. And they became friends, because Will was what they called a flash act. There was an act that used to go on between when they ran the movies and stuff. So they became friends. So when Sammy got out of the Army, had no place to go, they were nothing at all, and so they were in this part of the country, so Will called my father, and thus how it started.
Okay. And at age 2, I understand that they used, well, that's when he started in showbiz, is age 2.
Yes.
And in order to get him to be able to perform in the nightclubs, they would smear his face with cork.
Well, yeah, they used to, in those days when they had the child labor law, that he couldn't perform on the stages, so he would put black cork on his face and white around, just opposite of Jolson, and then he would wear a top hat and sometimes tails or tuxedo, and it was Sammy the Midget. That's how they got around it. That's how they got around it all his life until he got old enough. Okay,
and you met Sammy actually in Hawaii at 15, and then he actually hired you to be his assistant, his right-hand man, when you were 21.
Well, yes and no. I met him because my dad was taking a small variety show to Hawaii for the 442nd Nisi, who fought for us during the war. It was just a small variety show. Sammy was on the show. My summer vacation from high school, my dad asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, sure, you know, I'd love to, and first time out of the country. But when I got there, we were the 2 youngest kids on the show. The 2 youngest, all the rest were adults, you know, to us. And we became, it's one of those spontaneous things. You meet somebody, you know right away that, you know, we just clicked. And from that point until the time Sammy passed, we were very, very close. And when I got out of high school is when I took 1 year of college, and then Sammy asked me, do you want to come on the road with me? Because he couldn't afford to hire me for very much at all. Then he was not making, he wasn't making anything. And then it just grew on to become what it became.
And then he actually would stay on your floor, as I understand it, at your house in San Fernando Valley, right here in San Fernando
Right
Valley.
here in the San Fernando Valley, yeah.
Which city exactly?
Well, North Hollywood.
Okay.
Sammy used to stay in a hotel called the Williams Hotel in 5th Street in Maine, in downtown LA. And he used to take the streetcar out to the streetcar station, the red car station on Weddington, which is still there today, which is now refurbishing because it's and then we would walk through the park, because my house is very close to there. We'd walk through the park to my house. He would dance on top of the wooden picnic tables, and he would throw gravel on them, and he would do what they call a sand dance on the top of them, sliding across them, this and that. And then he used to spend, you know, the night or two in my house, and he used to sleep in a sleeping bag in my bedroom on the floor next to my bed.
You didn't give him your bed?
No.
No. Typical guys. Tell us about some of the prejudice breakthroughs that you witnessed, because I know you're Jewish, he was black back in the day. That ain't a great combination to be hanging around, especially in Vegas. So tell us about some of the breakthroughs that you're proud of him, that he was able to.
Well, I could tell you in order, really almost in order, the first two or three. The first one was a black performer being able to walk into and perform and eat at, or better yet, stay at the hotels where they were performing. He flat out refused one night. At that time it was called the Old Frontier Hotel, and he said to me one night, because I would come with him, so I had a room, so they had some place to hang out. They had to come through the kitchen. They couldn't go any place at all. Nobody black could. And so he used to hang out in my room. One day he says, let's go get something to eat. So we walked into the casino. I says, are you sure you want to do this? Because I knew what was going to happen. Now, we were talking the days when the mob ruled Vegas, when Vegas was really Las Vegas, not what it is now. It's a circus. But we did, and a lot of things happened when we were in the casino. People knew this was the star of the show, this and that. But we don't know sooner we're back in my room. Well, we actually went back to the dressing room, and Will Maston, who was from old-time Southerner, obey the rules, sit on the back of the bus type thing, just tore into Sammy, and so did Sammy's father. And it was a very, very bad scene. It's all covered in the book, all the dialogue. And he simply, then 2 or 3 minutes later in my room, there was a knock at the door, and there was the head of the hotel, and of course the casino boss, which really are the people who run the hotels. And, why did you do this, and so on and so forth. Well, Sammy just simply, and I'm trying to capsulize all this, it's sometimes very difficult. He flatly says, well, I'll tell you what, if I can bring 1,200 people twice a night in to see this show, then I have a right to have a room, to walk through the door, to eat in any restaurant I feel like in this hotel. And if you want the second show to go on, I suggest you go back to the dressing room and tell my uncle and my father to put on their tuxedos, because they're going to have to go out and do it, sir, because I flatly refuse to perform. Naturally, it took both these aback, and you're talking to the real heavy mobsters. And they, make a long story shorter, they said, okay, we'll let you do this, we'll let you do that, but that's about it, Sam, don't push it. And they turned to me, and they all know who you are when you're in a hotel. And they said, and you, Mr. Silber, make sure that he does. And Sammy says, and I quote, oh, don't worry about him, he's my shadow, thus the title of the book.
Me and my shadow.
Wherever he was, I was. But whenever he was in danger, literally, lifelike, I also was in danger.
As it says in the book many times, because I've read the book.
Yes.
Now, you two are also took up photography. And I want you to tell us a little bit about how that happened. And meanwhile, I'm going to show people, this is a picture in his book, that Sammy Davis Jr. took this photo. And this is of Mamie Van Doren. Look at, see, its caption says, actress, taken by Sammy. So go ahead and tell us how you guys got involved in photography. I know you got a lot of chicks that way up to the, it was either as cufflinks or want to take a picture.
Yes, yes, but that's a story for perhaps another time. When you're in show business, especially in the nightclub business, you have nothing to do in the daytime. And we didn't have all that much television back in those days, and it wasn't very interesting, so we would go window shopping. That was the thing. Now, being the fact that Sammy had no childhood at all, none whatsoever. I mean, he never played kick the can, or never played baseball, or never played football, or
never had a pet.
Never had, no, absolutely not.
And he was afraid of water because he never swam.
And was afraid of water. And so, as we would go through, the first store was Abercrombie & Fitch in San Francisco. And the first thing that we picked up was, we went, at that time, Abercrombie & Fitch was the main store for supplying people who were going on safaris and things like that. They were that's what they did. So we were walking through the store, and all of a sudden we came upon the sword department, the rapiers and this and that. So for the time we left there, we had 2 swords and 2 face masks, and off we went to the Fairmont Hotel to duel up and down the hallways of the Fairmont Hotel. Until Ben Swig said that one night we were dueling, and we were very good at it. And spontaneously, because we would call to each other as we were doing it, what was over your head, under your feet, jump the next, And we were just really going at it, and the doors to the Fairmont elevator opened up full of people, and there's these two guys, this black guy and this white guy, are dueling in the hallway of the Fairmont Hotel. So Ben says, please, you guys take it up onto the roof. That's how that started. And everything, the photography was the same way. The next thing is we went into a camera store. And we started taking up photography, but we began to take it so seriously. Actually, that happened actually here in Hollywood, on Vine Street, the camera store there, next to Cy DeVore, which was the big men's store at that time, which, by the way, still exists in the mall.
Vine and what? Do you remember Vine?
Sunset and Vine.
Okay, wow.
And, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, that's great.
Which was the hot corner in town. So we never went any place without a camera, both of us. I mean, literally, never went any place without a camera, which served other purposes, which we discussed earlier.
Yes, you have to read the book to find out that stuff.
But anyway, and we became very good at it, very good at it. So over the years, not knowing or not even expecting that I would ever write a book, as of right now, the best I have been able to count so far, I have well over 2,000, of which 325 pictures are in this book, of a book that only has 353 pages in it. So we took and wove the pictures of some of the people we were discussing in that chapter in there, so people would know who we were talking about without having to go back through the book and look at pictures and try to pick the people out.
It's like being told in real time. And one of the people I want to mention, because then Sammy was starting to become a star, and of course you hanging around him all the time because you had to, because you worked for him and did everything basically for him. This is a picture of, and I've never seen this before, and I'm a huge Marilyn Monroe buff. This is a picture, I believe this is on the Fox lot, when she was making How to Marry a Millionaire. Some guy was taking a photograph of a new car at the time, and you guys were there, and she was autographing photos for you and Sammy. And you can see, if you look, let me see, real close, she's holding two photos in her hand. And Arthur was nice enough to actually bring the photo with him today. So now I want to show you, this is the photo that's in this picture that she signed. And it says, you read with the caption what she wrote you, my dear.
It says, to Art, with love and kisses, Marilyn Monroe.
I'm speechless right now. I just can't even, I mean, how did this come about?
The picture? Well, then another one of the things that we did a lot of on the West Coast was when we had nothing to do in the daytime, we would go hang out at the studios. We happened to be on the lot of 20th Century that day. It happened to be the day, if you notice the gown she's wearing, who were movie buffs, that's the gown she wore when she sings the song Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. And she was doing it that day. So she went out to take this picture, she had on that gown, you know. And she's a very nice, very quiet lady. There's a lot of things about Marilyn Monroe that have been misunderstood, and you have to know her a little bit to understand. Very sad life. But that being said, we're not going to dwell on that, but that's how the picture came about, you know. And it's, of course, today it's a very valuable picture because of the signatures.
Yes, and you just sold it at Sotheby's, and we won't even discuss the amount. But here's another photo, just because of the fascination.
But I kept the copies.
Yes, you did. You smart man. Here's a picture of Marilyn and Arthur sitting on the couch, and Marilyn's laughing, and she doesn't even realize the camera's really there. And I think this is the most beautiful picture I've ever seen of her in my entire life. You can also see Sammy in the background. And who are the other two gentlemen, my dear?
Jess Rand is this person here who is Sammy's publicist. This is Jeff Chandler, the movie star.
Okay.
And Jesse Rand, this was his engagement party. And Sammy had just recently, you know, come out of, after losing his eye, because you can see in this picture he is wearing the patch with the gauze still under the patch. And so it was just a portrait of being taken of an engagement party. And it just so happens that I happen to be sitting on the chair next to Marilyn. You
poor thing.
Yeah, it's just the way it turned out.
I feel so sorry for you. But again, that is just the most beautiful picture I've ever seen of her in my life. I was just shocked when I turned to this page.
Because she's very relaxed.
Exactly. She looks more beautiful than she does in this autograph photo, I think. Now, speaking of autographs, Sammy, a lot of people might not know this, he could not write. He taught himself how to read. But he taught himself just how to write best wishes, good luck, to sign photos.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that struggle.
Well, let me tell you a little bit how he became a reader. When he was in the Army, he was put in with the regular troops, which of course did everything, you know, urinated in his beer and things like that, and treated him like you could imagine back in those days. So his sergeant pulled him out and put him in special services, which is the performing end of the Army, which he was at home at that. And he said, he gave Sammy a book to read, and actually started Sammy reading. That's where Sammy picked up reading and became a ferocious reader and could talk to you on anything from the pyramids of Egypt to anything, but couldn't write, and he never learned to write his name, other than his signature, which he practiced and did.
You know, my great-grandmother from Canada, my mother calls her Grandma, Baba, and she signed her name in X. She never learned how to write, and she didn't have a problem getting through life.
It's hard for people to understand that people just did, he never went to school.
Right. Because he didn't have a childhood.
Never had a childhood.
Okay, now I want to get to, because we have so much to talk about, so I kind of have to move on, and I apologize for that, but
it's all right.
So much information. You guys exchanged gold medallions. Here's a photo of each of your medallions, and then you actually have it on, is that correct?
Never take it off.
Okay, so first I want to show, here's Arthur's medallion, and I'll go ahead and move it up, and here's Sammy's. And Arthur, can you show us your medallion? I want them to do a close-up on you and show.
Yes, I can.
Here's the medallion.
And
then while you're doing that, if you could tell us...
Hope I'm not making too much noise with a microphone. I've got a hold of it. I've got to take it out now.
Tell us the story behind these medallions quickly.
All right, Sammy had 2 medallions made. Can you see that all right?
There we
go. On the and he had these specially made. These are custom made. There's not something you go into a jewelry store and buy. And mine says to Art, love Sammy.
Sammy. See it? Oh, wow. Hold on, they're going to do a close-up on this. This is just amazing.
And I never take it off, only to check the bail wearing from the chain.
Down. I want people to see it. There we go. Where is his?
His went with him someplace. That involves a little longer story, but I never fly anywhere without that on my neck. That's a superstitious thing of mine. I may take off all my other jewelry, which I wear a fair amount of it anyway, not because Sammy did, that's it. What you see is what I am. I'm very superstitious about that. I'm going to deviate here for a second. You have to cut me off. Why I'm superstitious about this. Sammy was doing the Colgate Comedy Hour, which starred Eddie Cantor. During rehearsals, Eddie Cantor was walking around in his T-shirt, and Eddie Cantor was wearing a mezuzah. Sammy asked him what the mezuzah was, and Eddie Cantor, I'm shortening the story because the whole story is in the book. And so Cantor explained to Sammy what it was. Then later, Cantor gave Sammy a mezuzah, which is a picture, going to be a picture in the new book, of Sammy wearing the mezuzah before he lost his eye, because his eye is real in the picture, and you can see it's the first one. I just came across that negative, which I researched for the new book. At any rate, that being said, Tony Curtis asked Sammy to do the title song for Six Bridges to Cross. And on the way in is when Sammy had his accident. But prior to that, Sammy was taking a shower after the second show, because he was getting in the car and driving into L.A. with his valet at the time. He took it off. He set it on the dresser, which he very seldom did. And it slid off the dresser, unbeknownst to him, and fell on the floor. And he left. He had the accident, and he lost his eye. And then when Eddie Cantor came to the hospital, was one of the first people there they were let in, all of a sudden it clicked in Sammy's head that he wasn't wearing the mezuzah. Now, to know I'm telling the truth, if the camera can pick up the hair on my arm, you'll see it standing on his head. That's when you can tell I'm really telling the truth. And to the day he died, he always felt that if he had been wearing the mezuzah, he would have never had the accident. Wow. That's a short version of the story, but that's it.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about Kim Novak. A lot of people know about the, I'm not going to say an affair, because they should have been able to be married, but tell us some little known facts about that relationship.
It was probably the most secretly kept relationship in Hollywood that Hollywood has ever had, bar none. There's only 4 people involved: Sammy, Kim, myself, and the young lady I was engaged to by the name of Patsy at the time. It really was a love affair, no question about it, and she can deny it all she wants, but I have Patsy still alive, and Patsy was there.
2 against 1.
Yeah. But we had great, it was agreed upon on us 4 that no pictures would ever be taken of any of us together. Smart move. The next one, Sammy went into the hotel because we used to play the Sands every other minute, because then you would go into the Sands and stay 4 to 6 weeks at a time, not just over the weekend. He had a special phone put in that did not run through the switchboard, because Las Vegas operators are known for listening in to phone conversations of stars. So it was straight, and then only 2 people could answer the phone, me and Sammy, or Sammy and myself, be proper English, I guess.
Okay.
And I had never met this woman. And so at any rate, we kept it a secret. And then we went back east to, invited her to be at her family's house for a Thanksgiving dinner. She took the train back through, went through Vegas, and of course Luella Parsons, Hedda Hopper, and every other name you could think of was in LA station waiting for her to get off the train. We were on that train, but we got off in San Bernardino. They didn't know the train stopped there, and we drove back to Vegas.
Okay, well, just 2 quick things because we're out of time, but I do want to mention that Frank Sinatra has said that Sammy was the greatest entertainer who ever lived. So I just want to put that footnote in. And also, I promised you I would show the audience this last picture. And this caption says, "This could kill you as it did him." This is Sammy smoking. He smoked, drank, and sang all at the same time.
All at the same time.
Which is amazing. So there you go. Take it for what it's worth. Arthur, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure. It's been a pleasure, Denise.
Thank you very much.